Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining today's Visas.AI attorney collab. My name is Pierre, and I'll be moderating slash hosting today's collab. Today's October 13th, 2023. And for those of us that join us live every week on the different networks, including YouTube, social media, thank you. For those of you watching this as a recording and or a podcast, also thank you for your support. Today, I'm joined by some awesome attorneys, U.S. immigration attorneys, and some non-attorneys like myself. Would love to speak about lots of things that are going on and just kind of pick our attorneys' brains on some questions that we both have and some of you have that sent in. Maybe I can give the mic over to Yesh. Yesh, I'd love to know what you've been working on, and if you can share with us any highlights from your week.
Good morning, guys. This week I've been, as we're getting closer to the second cap season deadline, we are processing a lot more H-1Bs. And so that's made a majority of what I've been working on. Just taking on some clients that are interested in, I've had a few clients come in wanting to file petitions, green card petitions for their siblings, which U.S. citizens filing for green card petitions for siblings is a very long wait, depending on what country you're petitioning for. So that's what I've been working on this week.
Wow, really? I didn't know that. So if I have a green card and I want to petition for my sister, what is the wait time look like, and is it based on nationality?
Well, if you have a green card, you can't really petition for your siblings. If you
Right.
have a citizenship, you can petition for your siblings. Based on nationality, right now, the two uh, right now India is 18 years. Um, and so if you're a U.S. citizen and you want to file for a sibling, um, the sibling would have to wait 18 years before they get a green card.
And does that
Yeah,
mean 18
and
years
it's
until they can even live here and work here, or just for the green card, or
yes.
does
So for the green card, when you file for the I-130, you get a priority date. And right now, based on the visa bulletins and the priority dates, um, it means once you have an approved I-130, you're basically waiting in line to get a green card. And right now, that line is 18 years of wait time. I believe it's 21 for Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't remember off the top of my head, so don't hold my feet to the fire for that. But yeah, it's a very
wow?
long wait. Um, Definitely different than what people believe. If you're a citizen, you can just bring in your whole family. That's not
Yeah,
true.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. And does that so for my case, since I'm not from India or Mexico, how would I know my it's two questions actually, and just I know it's a little complicated, but so it's John taught us during last week's collab that it's not based on your nationality, it's on your birth country. And then is
Mhm.
that true? And then secondly, when looking at the visa bulletin, again, any country that's not there is automatically applied to the rest, right?
Yes.
Oh, very helpful. You see, I'm learning a lot of stuff through our collabs. That's awesome because it's honestly really confusing. It sounds easy when you guys say it, but to me, I'm always really confused by how to do it. Like, is there a one rule across the board? And there isn't. And that's a great transition to you, John. I'll give you the mic to see what you've been working on, and if you have any feedback on what Yesh just said.
Great stuff, Yesh. Yeah, I got a wide assortment of cool things this week. Um, EB5s for Indians to invest in rural regional centers so that they can take.
Oops. I think
Every
we
other time
there we go.
card. EB1s, which was current a little over a year ago, went to 10 months, went to 14 months, then went out to 10 years, and then back to 6 years. The only one that they can file the initiating document for a green card, which in the the EB5 is an I-526, along with the adjustment of status, is the rural, or I'm sorry, any of the target area EB5s into regional centers. So we have a number of those that we're working on. We're doing two concurrently right now for two different families to help them. That's cool. Another one, which makes me a star with my children, is TikTok stars, right? So a really cool TikTok star that we're going to do an O1B for. Uh, she's neat because, while we're going to talk and we're talking heads and we're going to talk to immigration and a few thousand people may watch this, this young lady who is still a teenager um, has figured out how to make millions of people watch her. And not only do millions of people watch her, what her niche is to she's very pretty and she uses makeup, is to emulate different characters. And she was able to get 55 million views for two different TikTok or Instagram campaigns for members of the Squid Game. And so she is sponsored by really major makeup companies like L'Oreal and others. And so that's really fun to see the use of social business, and it's a challenge to take the O1B, which was really designed for movie stars and TV stars, to be applied for a different type of entertainment, which doesn't have critical reviews and things like that. But we've done at least a dozen social media stars in the last couple of years, and so it's fun to get another one. And again, it makes me look good in front of my little kids who know these folks. And then we're doing a really cool L1 for the largest in the world, and a glide airplane that does not have an engine. And this one is so big that it can circumnavigate the globe without using any engine propulsion, right? And it's really a fascinating thing. So we're helping this company, which is Spanish, come to the United States. We're getting L1As for their executives. We're getting O1s and EB1s for some of their rock star scientists, and then L1Bs for the folks that have the special sauce, right? And it's really fun. We're using our platform. We've created a new tool within our platform called Organizations, and we've been training our team on it. And what organizations allow us to do is build a master case that we can then use for the subsequent cases, right? So in the master case, say we're doing the executives, right? So we do one executive and we upload the relevant documents for the company and the relevant documents for the individual. We can take the company documents and copy them over to the next case, and then we can take the strategies that have talked about the company and what it's doing and how it's owned and how it's structured, and move that over to the next case. So it really helps us become efficient. And then the last thing that we're doing is, this is the second wave of H1Bs. And so we're really picking up right now. We have a little over, we have what, 17 days or 18 days left to hit the last wave of H1Bs, or this wave of H1Bs. So we have deadlines. Things that we have to be concerned about is we have to file LCAs and get them back. You cannot file an H1B without an approved LCA. LCAs can take 7 to 10 days, and Murphy's Law will show that sometimes the system will go down. And what do you do if it does, right? So what we have is a great number of visas. We have teams in India and the United States that are looking at all these things. And our platform has been just spectacular. It gives us 4 layers of quality control so that we're able to work across, timelines and date lines and different hours, different types of the clock to make it work. And so a lot of fun going on in our practice today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. You always have a very eventful week highlights, and I love that you're joining us from the car because that's what real immigration attorney life is all about. It's Friday, you go down to your different offices to an ALA event. So I love that you're joining us. There's no excuse to miss the weekly attorney collab. That's lovely. I want to say hi to our new guest, Roberto. Sorry, excuse my voice. Welcome in, Roberto. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And yeah, hi to you all. It's nice meeting you.
Awesome. It's a pleasure. Well, Roberto, I'd love to ask you if you'd like to maybe introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do since it's your first collab with us. And then if you feel comfortable, you're more than welcome to share what you've been working on in the last week or month or any time period to share with our audience of immigration attorneys and, of course, applicants and clients that are watching our live stream at the moment.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And a little bit about me. I'm Colombian. Um, I originally studied law in Colombia. I went to the US, did my LLM, took the New York bar, and after I passed, I started practicing as a contract attorney with a law firm based in Virginia. And I've been learning a lot about immigration law since, handling a lot of different type of cases. This last week, I had my first couple of 245Is, and that was new for me. And it was kind of a, well, pleasant surprise. I knew it's a couple. I knew one of them was eligible. Um, we had some doubts about the other, and initially he had all kinds of problems. 'Cause he had tried asylum, he had tried to request a visa while in Mexico. He had a bunch of different things, and then once we realized the power of the 245I and that it also applied to him, it was great. And the smile he got when he got the news that he was going to be eligible for a green card right from the start. I mean, he was ecstatic. It was great. So that's been my last week. I've also been working on my first EB2 national interest waiver. That's also pretty new for me. I started working mostly on, family-based petitions, that kind of thing, standard and 400s. I went into asylum law a lot because of my background and because I'm fluent in Spanish. Um, I've always had an easier time communicating with a lot of clients that, are requesting asylum because of their background. And I'm just now starting to get more involved into business type of visas, but I've been enjoying it quite a bit so far.
That's awesome, Roberto. Thank you so much for joining us. Bienvenido. Yo hablo también español, and I'm so
Uh,
happy to see there is a fellow Spanish-speaking attorney with us on the call. That's wonderful. I wanted to ask you if it's okay. Of course, you just started in a capacity, but immigration South America is obviously a wonderful market, and it's a very active market in the southern states. Have you, in all the different cases that you've been exposed to so far, what is the percentage of cases that you'd say come from Latin America or South America? Is it like a majority of the cases you've been seeing?
yes, absolutely. I think most of my cases are actually, I'd say it's probably like a 70-30 split, 70 Latin American background with hefty bias towards Mexico. And I'd say the other 30% is mostly Asian countries. I think I've only had one or two clients that were European, and it was very basic things like trying to change from a visitor visa to a student visa or that type of thing. Nothing really major. Yeah, I think most of my clients definitely are Latino clients.
That's really interesting because every attorney almost is exposed to a different crowd. John, if you're still with us, I really want to ask you about why. I'm just curious. Why do you think there's such low numbers of immigration cases in general that come from Europe in comparison to other regions of the world? Is there like a prediction that we know of? Is it more difficult or more easy for them?
That's an interesting question. I never thought that there were less cases coming from Europe. Um, I think there's a flow into America from really everywhere that has, I would say, open relationships with the United States. Obviously, immigration's at the very base is about protecting national security. So you'll see from time to time and from administration to administration, and based on the tensions in the world, that will prohibit certain countries from coming in the United States, or nationals of those countries from coming in the United States. But I think we have a very steady flow of European immigration. And I think what you notice that's really interesting is we have such a great diversity in just the attorneys on this call itself, right? We got different languages, different cultures, different countries. It's really neat. And so I'm really happy that Roberto's calling us from Colombia, because what's really interesting about the practice of immigration is that the clients are coming from a country into a country. And you can do this practice either from the United States, like we all are, and then help people from outside the United States come in the United States, or you can be an American attorney or U.S. licensed attorney like Roberto is, and help people from Colombia enter the United States from Colombia. And so it's really neat how we do, I wouldn't say the same thing, but the same area of practice in so many different ways, right? And how you can get your clientele in so many different ways. Whether you're somebody that is from a particular community and lives in an area, and you do everything for that community, whether it's immigration to wills and trusts to contracts to whatever it may be, or you're an immigration specialist that only does immigration but might do many different cultures, right? Many different countries. And so it's always interesting to me how people find our niche. And some are aiming right at it, especially if they are immigrants. They come over, they know that's what they're going to do. They're going to serve that community. And others that just kind of end up in it and then end up being very good at it. It's just a really neat thing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John, and thank you, Roberto. Welcome in. Well, with that being said, I would love to transition us into the second third of today's collab. Perhaps we can go back and talk a little bit about how the current news are in U.S. immigration. Yesh and John and Roberto, as our attorneys leading this call, I'd love to ask any of you that's willing to come on and take the mic and tell us a little bit about what's been going on in the immigration world in the last week that might be of importance to the audience watching us. Has the dates before we get into Visas.AI? Oh, I don't think we hear you. Maybe I can.
No, I said I would love to hear. I'd love to hear what they have to say, what they're thinking about that's happening in the world and how it impacts immigration.
I love it. Thanks, John. Yes, so maybe over to you, Yesh, if there's anything you'd want to share with us about what's been going on in the world of immigration that you've been exposed to, if any.
There's not really much of an update from my end, to be honest. My main goal is my October 31st deadline right now. So I really haven't been focusing or haven't been keeping up with anything else. I do. The new visa bulletin came out, but there's just a slight change in just the priority dates. But aside from that, my main focus has been my October 31st deadline.
Oh,
Not
that's
too
wonderful.
exciting. Not too exciting
Yes,
on my end.
what is the change in the visa bulletin? What has changed a little bit? Love to know that.
From October to November, we really haven't seen much. It was just a couple of months off of the priority dates for the EB2 and EB3s from last month to this month. But a lot of my clients that have been calling have been asking to see if that backlog will ever will ever become current, or if it's USCIS will actually push it up so that they can get a green card within 10 years, which you know the answer to that is we never know with what USCIS does, especially with the AB1s being pushed back and then coming back to, I believe, 6 years or 7 years now.
Wow.
2019.
Thank you. That's helpful. I think we always forget. We get caught up in things that our clients want to know immediately. And these visa bulletins issue on the 15th of every month. So it sounds like today's the 13th. So it came out a little bit early this month, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Great.
I realize that. That's great. Thank you, Yash. John, how about you? Have you been able to? I know you love keeping up with news. Has there been any new major updates other than the visa bulletin that you think have significance, even in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, Pierre, and I love that you bring that up, and I love that you and I can maybe talk about this a little bit, because I think the news of the world right now is the attack by Hamas in Israel, and it is. I want to preference this is, I'm of the Jewish faith, you're of the Muslim faith, and I have a lot of Muslim clients and very good friends. Some of my clients are also very good friends, and every one of them that I know are loving people that care for their families, just want to live a peaceful life. What we're talking about is terrorism, and that terrorism is not limited to any faith. As a matter of fact, I think faith or under the guise of different religions is how people use it, right? And so we see it a lot under that sort of guise. So what we have is a horrific terrorist attack by a group called Hamas that killed 1,200 people in Israel, and they targeted young people, and they targeted a kind of a party, and the more we're learning about what happened, the worse it is. We know there are kidnappings of not just Israeli citizens, but American citizens, European citizens. We've seen a young lady who was maybe killed, or maybe she was passed out, but she had her clothes ripped off and was latched to a vehicle and driven around. We've seen grandparents pulled away from their grandchildren, and those children killed. We've seen babies killed. I mean, it's just horrific.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping for that did this and brought to justice. I'm afraid it won't be that simple, though, and it has impacts in other countries. And probably the people doing it are doing it to try to get attention and try to pull countries like the United States into war, and it's just an evil act, and I hate that. I want to tie it into immigration. So I've been lucky to represent a lot of asylum cases for Muslims that were Afghans. And the real interesting thing is my clients were supporters of democracy. And my clients, many of which were in the military or the police or just related to the movement of democracy, women's rights, peaceful existence in their country. And then they had to leave when the United States cut off its relationship in Afghanistan, right? And the Taliban took over. And it reminds me of listening to these guys talk about the Taliban and how those were terrorists. And the Taliban has done horrible things to my clients and their families, many of which are left behind. And I recall one of my clients was a commander in a unit, and they took over his house. The Taliban took over his house, and they videoed them taking over this guy's house, posted it on Facebook, smashed up all his belongings, had his family tied. Right, and we're given the opportunity to get states, but they left behind the people that couldn't protect themselves. So these things aren't simple, and they're complicated, and they're sad, and to
I'm sorry to cut you off, John, but I think you're cutting off. Your signal's cutting off, so we don't hear your sentences. Let us know if you can hear us. One, two, three for John. Test. Can you hear us?
Is it? Well, I'd love to hear your perception of it.
Yeah, John, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
my can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for bringing this topic forward. I definitely come from the Middle East, and I've grown up my entire life in the Caribbean, and now doing my immigration journey to the U.S. I've learned the beauty of the US is the freedom, the true freedom of religion and true freedom of speech. And I think the beauty of that is that you can think anything that you want, you can have beliefs, but the beauty of the American system, in my opinion, is there's a limit and an extent to how much you can have freedom of speech and religion until it becomes violent. Then it's no longer freedom. Then it's violence. And I think that's a really, really big takeaway. It's very easy to be divided by religions and almost like teams, one team against the other. But I truly don't think that's the case. Politics are very dirty and everyone loses in politics. So I have no political opinion at all. But one thing that I have is I just truly, truly hope that we can all have mercy on each other as humans. I think what has been really appalling for me and very shocking is seeing people see other people be murdered and justify it and say they deserve it, or yeah, that's what you get for war, instead of saying, wow, that's really sad that innocent people have to pay for the price. And I think there's a huge difference, fundamental difference, when a group of soldiers or fighters go to war voluntarily, and the opposite where civilians are just doing their thing, having a good time, young people that really don't even maybe have political opinions be murdered. So I have no religious or political opinion, as in there's no side or no teams, but I truly, truly loved growing up into the Western side of the world where there's so much respect for other cultures, there's so much respect for freedom of religion, but when it becomes violent, it's really intense. So I truly believe that it's a very uncomfortable time because it's very easy to be divided. But when we look at the US immigration side, we're all people with very different journeys that come from quote unquote turbulent places. I mean, your grandfather, John, helped a lot of immigrants after the Holocaust, right? So that was a turbulent time. Then through your journey, you helped refugees from Afghanistan, refugees from Ukraine, and now it's the same issue. What we learn is that we can't let turbulent places and politics and religion divide us, but rather the American way of living is you can have the freedom to practice your religion, but when it becomes violent, it is no longer that conversation. So I hope that was a little helpful. For me, I'm really sad once again to see any human look at another human's life go away ever at any given time and say that they deserve it, or yep, that's the price of war, because it's very painful that we let politics and quote unquote religion make us inhumane, that we no longer even value a human life regardless of what that life believes, especially when it's a civilian life. I think there's a huge crossover. War has casualties, soldiers fight and soldiers die, but when we look at a civilian living a regular life on one side of the equation and we see them be murdered and say that's well deserved, it's just brutal and it's cruel. It's very cruel in my opinion, and it's so uncomfortable that I've just been kind of frozen. Almost like when something shocking happens, I've just been frozen for the last 2 weeks, where we have to function, we have to continue on. But yeah, it's very insane to me, for lack of a better description, what's occurring. With that being said, does anyone else on our call today have an opinion that they'd like to share, or anything that they want to cover on this topic? You're more than welcome to pitch in.
I
All
think
good?
you
Yeah.
explained it well, Bear. I mean, we all are the human first, and then we adopt any religion. If we keep that rule that we are human first, and then we adopt religion, I think all the problem will be solved.
Beautiful. Very beautiful way of saying it, Jay. Thank you.
Sorry,
John,
guys.
any closing remarks?
Yeah, I had a police officer that pulled me over, so that was kind of funny. Yeah, I wanted to say something before she comes back. You know, I think the argument that's trying to be fronted by those who want to defend this action are that the group that was targeted deserved it. They don't, just as you said, but it has to deal with the issue of colonization, I believe, right, and people who are indigenous to an area. But I think this is a little bit different, and I think we need to remember how Israel was colonized and why it was colonized. First of all, Israel was the homeland to Jews. And the reason that Israel was created was because of World War II, where Jews were targeted. As Jews were targeted, and 6 million of them were killed for being Jewish. And unfortunately, those groups that um, defended them and helped, quell the Nazis, didn't really want to bring him in. And my great grandfather, Abraham Rockmore, was the immigration attorney for the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society, and he helped pass legislation that opened the door for some Jews to come to America, but it wasn't popular by any means. These were poor people that had nothing left. Many were sick. And so Israel was a place for them to go back to their homeland and to start over. Well, there were people living there, and the Jews that were there were immediately met with other people that wanted to kill them for being Jewish, and they've become a successful country in any way that you ask that. But we have a swing back and forth of how people have rights within that country, and it's not simple. And you have some people in the Israeli government that don't want to give Palestinians any rights, and then you have some that want to give them full rights. But then you have some people within that, and the PLO had a charter, remember Yasser Arafat, that called for the annihilation of Jews. So it's not an easy thing. It's a complicated thing, and mostly complicated by the people who are absolute thinkers, right? And the absolute thinkers are getting in the way of the reasonable thinkers. The reasonable thinkers should have equality and fairness, and everybody should have a right to have a great life and not be subsequent to anybody. But then we have others out there that want to kill everybody for their ideology. And that's all existing at the same time in the same place. And here it has risen its ugly head again. And when one acts out like this, you don't usually get reasonable responses. And that's what we have in front of us. Will probably be unreasonable responses, and then that'll cause more friction, and we go on and we go on. My hope is for peace. My hope is for equality. My hope is for great lives for people that have the chance. And that's what I like being an immigration attorney, because anybody can come to America. Not everybody makes it here, but just as you said, Jews and Muslims can coexist in America. Christians, Catholics,
You name it.
Hindus, anybody can come here and be religious or not be religious, right? You don't have to be religious. That's also really cool. Matter of fact, that's what I like most about America is as a country, we decided to not adopt any religion. Now, the religious folks within our country want to sometimes say their religion should be more important, but I think as a nation we need to be a nation of laws, not religious ideology. And that's where I think we may not be the best country. We may not have it perfect, we don't, but I think that ideology is the best that there is in the world. And that's what I think we should continue to spread. And it's just the best way to go about it. Those
Beautiful.
are my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. Anna, welcome, and thank you for joining our weekly Visas.AI attorney collab. It's lovely having you. No pressure if you're not comfortable speaking, but if you'd like to speak and say hi, you're more than welcome to. We love having you, and just for you to know, we are live streamed. So if you'd like to join, just to let you know that. But you let us know if you're comfortable speaking. We were just closing the conversation on how US immigration is such a wonderful opportunity and experience for a lot of us that came, quote unquote, from turbulent places, or regions in the world, and I was expressing how I love how in this country there's just so much freedom of religion and speech, but that there is a level where it becomes violence. That's no longer freedom, that becomes violence. And John covered his thoughts on the current situation that's happening in Israel and the attacks on the Jewish community. And John, if I'm not mistaken, from the numbers I saw, this is the worst attack in numbers on civilians since the Holocaust. Is that correct?
I don't know. I know the number I saw was 1,200. I don't. Obviously, the Holocaust had 6 million, so there's a big gap. If this is number 2, that's a good thing. that the
Yeah.
second was that. But I don't know. Maybe a single act. It would be interesting to learn more about it. I don't know as much as I'd like to, honestly. I was watching college football when they broke in and the president talked about it, and then I've heard bits and bobs about it over social media, really. But yeah, it'd be interesting if that was the case.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I know we're moving into the fourth quarter of today's collab, and I'd love for us to, of course, end on a positive note. As we always try to, we're constantly dealing with difficult conversations. But the beauty of it is that we are doing our best to help, people start new lives here to our best ability. I truly believe we can't solve the world's problems, but we can help at a time. And I love what we do here. Even though I'm not an immigration attorney, I love what you guys do here and what I see every week. I want to ask a question that came in through YouTube, and it's a little bit simple, so maybe we need more context, but I'll ask our attorneys. We spoke in the past, if someone overstays and gets married to a U.S. citizen, that somehow that becomes erased because of the advantage of marrying a US citizen. However, someone is asking if you entered illegally and or overstayed, um, and you marry a US citizen, will that also just be deleted off your record? So not overstaying your, let's say, tourist visa, but what if you entered this country completely illegally and then you married a US citizen? What happens then? And I'll ask it to any attorney that's willing to speak. Look at us. We have shy attorneys this week. I think John is busy. Yes, do you have any context about this, or is it a little complicated?
I feel like we need a little bit more information about that. But if there has to be a waiver that they could file for in that situation. And maybe Roberto might have a little bit more information about that. But it's not
Mm.
uncommon that this rises a lot of times if you have someone that was not inspected um, enter the country and then later find their significant other, get married. There would be applicable waivers that they might be eligible to file for
That's
to
right.
yeah, to forgive their
Ah,
illegal entry and overstay.
interesting. I never knew that. That's really interesting. Because I
Yeah.
did some Google searches and there's no clear answer on that. So if you marry a U.S. citizen, not only can you waive, of course, through a legal process, overstaying a tourist visa, let's say, but you can even waive entering and not being inspected into the country legally.
Not exactly. So what Yesh is on to what the concept is. So sorry, I was busy for a second, but I'm back. The 601 and 601A waiver are the processes one would use. So if you enter the country without inspection, that's called an EWI, EWI, which is your classic sneak in sort of scenario. You can't just marry an American citizen and solve the problem, right? That doesn't work. However, if you come in on a visa, even just a visitor visa, and overstay, work illegally, any of those things, if you marry an American citizen, that is complete absolution. Um, Now, if there's other crimes you commit, that may make you deportable. But if the only thing you've done incorrectly is overstay a visa or work without authorization, marriage to an American citizen will resolve that, or even having a 21-year-old child who's an American citizen will resolve that. But entering without inspection cannot be fit being married to an American. The 601 and 601A waiver, the difference is the 601 is you'd file it at a consulate, and once they approve it, they would let you in. So what you would do is you would leave the United States, you would show that you're married to an American citizen. They would then deny you entry because you had entered without inspection or overstayed or whatever, and then you would have the 601 waiver adjudicated. So during the Obama administration, they added an element that says you don't have to file with petition, but then you could be in the United States, and then they would make a determination. And if it was yes, then you could just go out and come back in immediately. You wouldn't have to wait probably the better part of a year to do it as you would under 601. So what are the grounds for 601 and 601A? It is hardship to an American citizen. It's not merely being married to one. So that American citizen has to have a hardship, that is based on usually health, but it can be other things, including financial, right? So some examples that we've done on 601 waivers. We had a really interesting case with a woman who was on a J visa, right? J visas have a 2-year home residency requirement. The reason this woman could not go home to her home country is that she was Russian, and not just that she was Russian, but she became famous for writing about how bad the press had been treated in Russia. Okay. And she got international notoriety for exposing the deaths and torture and disappearance of members of the media in Russia. Okay. So if she goes back to Russia, she would be subject to that. Well, the one visa that you can get that which waives the J visa without having a J visa waiver is the O1. We are able to present and win an O1 visa based on her extraordinary ability as a member of the media for all the notoriety she received writing this very brave series of articles about what Russia was doing to its members of the media. Okay? So she marries an American citizen, and she can continue to get her O1 extended because it allows that. But the mere marriage to her American citizen husband was not enough to get her outside of that. So the 601A waiver was presented because her husband suffered from really acute anxieties, right? And that anxiety was increased if either his wife or he and his wife would have to go back to Russia and face the possibility of her being killed. So the evidence that we had to prove that case was an expert opinion from his psychiatrist that talked about the diagnosis of the mental anxiety, the acute anxiety, and what that impact had upon him, the prescription of drugs, and the fact that if he'd gone to Russia with her, or if she went to Russia on herself, how that would make it even worse for him. And we were able to successfully win that case. So that's a cool example of that waiver for that. Now, other examples that you can look at with to get that might be in children, right? So a lot of times people are here for a long time, and that's when they ultimately marry an American, right? So they come over, maybe they come over from Mexico without inspection. They meet somebody in America, and they get married, and then they have a child. Well, that child is another American citizen that may have some sort of problems. Those problems can include stress or other diseases or things like that, and that's how those arguments are made. I've seen arguments successfully made regarding the inability to get the type of work that one or the other would do in the town that they may have come from. But medical care and medical treatment is usually a better argument than the economic impacts. Does that help?
That helps a lot. Thank you so much, John. And I know we have 6 minutes left, so I want to ask two more questions for any attorney that wants to answer. We need advice. I overstayed my F1 visa. I got married to a US citizen, and I got my I-131 and 765 combo card approved for 2 years. Me and my wife want to travel abroad for a holiday. Will I get in trouble with my immigration agent at port of entry if I go overseas?
No. They've got the travel card has been approved, so they can now travel lawfully. That the travel card is also known as an advanced parole, and that allows them to travel inside the United States lawfully. Now, if they had left before that was approved, and those don't come quickly, by the way. They should.
Yeah.
I could talk all day about how work and travel approvals should come with the receipt notice, because there's literally no discretion, but they don't. I mean, some of them, yes, how many? We got some at 13 months, crazy long times to get employment authorization and travel documents. It's nuts. But since they have it, then they would present that card along with their passport, and they should be able to re-enter. Now, if they leave before, they would abandon their case, right? And they would be stuck out, and they'd have to refile the consular processing of that marriage case and wait for an appointment. So in this situation, they're in a good position.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you for that answer. And then I'll ask you a follow-up question. I think we spoke about this three collabs ago with Dr. K, who is a wonderful person that joins our collabs here and there. But it says, "Hello, John and team. I've been told that it's okay to stay outside the US if you have a green card, as long as you visit the US every few months. Is that true, or could it cause an issue in the long run with my green card? Thank you."
It's mostly true. Here's how it works. We're working a case on this where somebody was out more than 6 months, and not long after 6 months, and we think immigration really took a hard line on it. But if they're not out more than 6 months, there's really no real analysis that the border will do. They'll just let you in and out. If it's between 6 months and a year, and that's the case that we have right now, 6 months, 27 days, it then becomes a rebuttable presumption that you have to prove that you intended to reside in the United States. And then that's when you want factors such as property that you own in the U.S., a job that you have in the U.S. Those are kind of the two main ones. But you could have family, you could have, I don't know, something that you're involved in, but really it's property and jobs. So usually they don't ask many questions there. Although, like I said, we have a case that has that, and very shortly after. So what triggers something like that? Well, what triggers it is lots of in and outs, right? So if you're just going out and coming back every couple months, you're probably okay as long as you make it less than 6. But if you're coming out every couple months and then all of a sudden you stay out 8 or 9, that's when somebody might jack with you, because they now have the discretion to do so, right? So if you keep it every couple months, which means definitely less than 6, probably not a problem. But if you're doing it a lot and then it's more than 6, then they might make you prove it. And then that's when you're going to have to say, wait a second, I don't have property here. I don't have a job here. I've just been coming in and seeing friends. So that's my suggestion. Every couple months, good. More than that, dicey. More than a year, you've likely abandoned it, right? Not saying that people haven't snuck back in and they let you do it, but a year is bad. If you know that you're going to be out more than a year, but it's a temporary stint, there is a form that you can fill out to get an approved absence of a year and a half maximum to be out of the United States. But that primarily means you've been sent to a job assignment in another country, but you still intend to be here. And that's the presentation of the case, how you would do that.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, John. And so basically, what that means in context is if you have a green card, you're somehow now tied to the US. There's no way for you to just say, "Oh, I actually miss my country. I want to go back every few months, or I want to go for a year." But if you become a citizen, well, does that still apply? Does that rule still apply, or
No.
as an American citizen, you can do whatever you want?
American citizen, you can go anywhere you want. Very hard to lose American citizenship. You can renounce it. That means you give it up, right? They don't take it from you very often. We heard that come up for the first time really under the Trump administration. Usually, we'd say, look, if you're a traitor to the United States, they'll kill you, but he'll die as an American, right?
Right.
But the Trump administration floated something. They never quite initiated it, but they started talking about if you obtained your citizenship through fraud, then they could revoke it. And what they were meaning by that is it was a scare tactic. If anything in your non-immigrant visa application or your green card, aka immigrant application, or anything on there turned out to be false, then they could unwind the whole thing, right? Well, there's a lot of things, degrees of falseness, right? So if it's an
Right.
absolute that anything's false and it doesn't rise to the level of fraud, but then they're going to claim that it is, that's a really dangerous precedent. So I'm really glad that we didn't get into that scenario where people's citizenship was being pulled on them. But right now, it's back to what it's always been before. If you're an American, you're an American, and you can many times obtain citizenship in multiple countries, right? Um, my wife, her nationality is both Italian and Spanish, and she has parents and grandparents. Well, she has parents on one side and grandparents on the other. And it's interesting how they look at their citizenship in those countries. There's not a really difficult process to do it. They consider her both. Italy considers her Italian and Spain considers her Spanish, even though she spent no time in those countries because of her ancestry, right? And so it's merely signing up, and she could become an Italian, and as a spouse, I could become Italian. In America, it's a much more difficult process to obtain citizenship, and it isn't given that way through nationality. And part of it is we're not a country based on nationality; we're a country based on principles, right? And that's the difference of how we look at our immigration process versus how others do.
Excellent, excellent, John. Thank you so much for all that wisdom. I think that truly wraps today's collab. We've answered so many questions. For any other questions we couldn't answer this week, we'll answer next week. Thanks everyone for joining today's collab. Any closing remarks from anyone? We're all good? Wonderful.